Hi everyone, it's me, and today, Disney secrets you don't know about Pinocchio. Let's go!
Okay, so everyone always thinks about Pinocchio's nose because it's quite literally right there in your face. But have you ever considered this? In order to keep standing, Pinocchio would need to bend backwards significantly to balance out the added weight of that branch, and eventually even the bird's nest at the end. But look, Pinocchio isn't leaning back at all to compensate, which means that he must have some kind of counterbalance growing in his, oh my.
I like big butts and I cannot lie.
Okay!
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Film Theory, the show that has...
Hello Internet! Welcome to Film Theory! Thank you so much. Hi! Please keep this family wholesome, friendly and wholesome, so yeah.
corporate strings to hold us down, which is why we get to talk about things like child slavery in Disney films. That's right, today we're going all the way back to that Disney classic about the exploitation of child laborers, Pinocchio. Now, as a kid, this movie just really provided me with years worth of nightmare fuel. I mean, Monstro's mouth, anyone? Children turning into literal work mules? It's terrifying. But looking back on it now, Pinocchio actually raises a lot of questions, like, did people really just throw money during marionette shows like some kind of puppet strip club? If people who go to Pleasure Island become jackasses, are the other animals that we see throughout the movie also people? Or are there just animals who actually do walk around as living creatures? What about this fox? He's awfully human. What about Jiminy Cricket? We haven't even gotten into the logistics of literally lighting a fire inside a whale. Sadly though, all these questions are gonna have to wait for another day because today we are tackling everyone's favorite subject, business. Specifically the business of Pleasure Island.
So business, we are talking about a lot of money.
Bizarro 1940s bad boys utopia.
Look at yourself. Smoking. Playing pool.
Today's episode is all about the incredibly scary reality that Pleasure Island, as we see it in the movie Pinocchio, could have actually existed in real life. I like to call this episode How to Succeed in Child Slavery Without Really Trying. But first, a recap, because I can't assume that you guys have seen this. Pinocchio is really old at this point.
Alright, case and points, please do remember that slavery, no. Child slavery, no. Alright?
I mean, to kids nowadays, Tangled is probably like the furthest back they go and call it a Disney classic. Oh boy! Anyway, this guy named Geppetto is a clockmaker in a vaguely European Disney-esque country around the turn of the century, who makes a marionette named Pinocchio and then wishes for him to become a real boy.
I wish that my little Pinocchio might be a real boy.
The blue fairy comes down and grants his wish, but in a pure dick move, only grants the wish halfway, because apparently fairies can just do that for the lols.
I've given you life because tonight, Geppetto wished for a real boy.
Am I a real boy?
No, Pinocchio.
So instead of Pinocchio
I grant you a wish, but halfway.
becoming a real boy, he instead becomes a living puppet monster. Geppetto wakes up, sees that his marionette has come to life, and like anyone would do in this situation, goes back to sleep. The next morning, though, he then shoves Pinocchio out the door saying, hey, you've existed for 12 hours now, surely you can figure out school, right? On the way, Pinocchio meets two foxy swindlers, Honest John Foulfellow and Gideon, who proceed to swindle Pinocchio several times into doing multiple stupid things, like becoming an actor.
Go ahead. Make a fool of yourself.
Until finally leaving with them to Pleasure Island along with a horde of kidnapped children. Once Pinocchio and the small army of young boys arrive at Pleasure Island, they drink, smoke, trash a mansion, and destroy all the rides. So basically they become the 1940s equivalent of Team 10. Every day, bro. But every good vacation has to come to an end. And the boys start to regret all that indulgence when they start turning into literal donkeys.
What do you think I look like? A jackass?
It's revealed that the big scheme behind the entirety of Pleasure Island is to transform boys into donkeys, who are then sold off to work in salt mines while the owners of Pleasure Island make themselves a hefty little profit. Or is there actually a profit to be had here at all? This whole thing sounds so ridiculous and far-fetched. Is there any chance that kidnapping kids, transforming them into donkeys, and then selling them off to the highest bidder is actually a profitable business venture? I mean,
first of all, it's a bad business because it's just bad. Please treat all human beings properly. Alright? Please treat all human beings appropriately, especially when they're children. Children are the future of our species, of humanity, right?
Look at this, the kids destroy the amusement park. So should the owners of Pleasure Island just scrap their half-assed plans, or I guess in this case, fully-assed plans, and just sell off the park to become yet another Six Flags? No, they shouldn't. Child kidnapping and donkey sales are actually surprisingly profitable, and I'm about to show you how. Aren't Disney episodes fun? So the first question is, how much is a donkey actually worth? Going by EquineNow.com's prices, it seems like most jackasses today sell between $500 and $2,000 each. Unless, of course, you're an MTV-branded jackass, in which case you're worth $2.5 million. Since our child jackasses are certainly more intelligent than most, we'll use the $2,000 per jackass price range.
You are a great donkey. You are like top donkey.
Since Pinocchio happened sometime around the late 1800s or early 1900s, as indicated by the Ferris wheel first introduced in 1893, we're gonna adjust for inflation and estimate that each donkey is selling for about $76 in Pinocchio's time. And just how many of these donkeys is the coachman able to sell off in a batch? Well, to answer that, we first need to know how many little boys he's gotten himself a hold of. The best way to estimate the total donkey load isn't actually to count the boys at Pleasure Island, but rather it's to look at how they all got there. This Mississippi-style steamboat that transports all the boys to the island.
So you're talking about maximum capacity for the structure itself. Okay.
Also tells us how many victims we're going to be looking at. Passenger riverboats of this size with 3 decks have an absolute max capacity of 2,155 people. So given the coachman's unscrupulous morals and lax safety records, I mean, just look at the kids falling between Ferris wheel cars. We can assume that he's stuffing the maximum number of kids onto this thing as possible, especially since children are so much smaller than adults and these boys aren't carrying any luggage. So we're going to subtract a standard 50 people to account for the boat crew of a steamer that large, which leaves us with room for a whopping 2,105 young boys. It's truly a pretty horrifying level of evil that's going on here in Pleasure Island. That's not even accounting for all the rampant racism and underage smoking. So multiplying everything out, we have 2,104 donkeys, we minus 1 because Pinocchio escapes, $76 each, gives us $159,904, which might not seem like all that much, but remember, this is money way back at the turn of the century. Accounting for inflation, the
Late 1800s, early 1900s. Come on, man. What are you doing, humanity? Why are you being so evil towards each other? Come on.
coachman is looking to net a whopping $4,208,000. That's $4 million of 2018 dollars. So things are looking pretty good for the old coachman here, right? But the one thing that every businessman will tell you is that before you go walking off with your profits, you need to start calculating your overhead. And running Pleasure Island isn't a simple operation, so we need to factor in the costs of 2,000 boys drinking themselves under the table while destroying an entire amusement park. As I pointed out earlier, in just one night, a boatload of boys managed to level Pleasure Island into a desolate hellscape. It's like the world of Fallout. What's worse than a nuclear apocalypse? Oh, just 2,000 young, rambunctious boys looking to scrap, smoke, and drink. So
come on, they need to be disciplined, alright? They need to be scolded, they need to be punished when they need discipline when they did wrong, right? When you do something wrong, you need to be disciplined. However, the saying called 上梁不正下梁歪. When the top is wrong, it will trigger down and cause the bottom to be corrupted as well. Which, as adults, as the people that is in charge, you have to be correct, you have to be righteous, you have to do the right thing, and not be a bad role model. Be a good role model, be a good example for the next generations.
how much is it costing the coachman to rebuild an entire amusement park every time they bring one of these boatloads over? Well, initially I calculated out every little piece of wood and every glass pane broken in here, but what I found out was that most of the repairs were actually just small items that ultimately didn't make that big of a difference on the bottom line. At most, we were looking at about $1,000 on tobacco, which translates to about 38 old-timey dollars, and about 200 inflation-adjusted dollars to restock the destroyed mansion with more old furniture for the boys toys to tear apart. Both of those numbers not nearly enough to hit the coachman's bottom line. The bigger ticket items though is where they get ya, namely the rides. If we're running this business, we're basically gonna need to replace the Ferris wheel cars and the entirety of the carousel, which looks like the central axis has actually been bent down the middle. This all begs a completely separate question. What kind of hell beasts are these children? I mean, what would enable them to even be able to try bending a carousel in half? And how many children did it take to accomplish that sort of thing?
If that's the case, it's not just the children's fault, it's not just the adults' fault, it's just generally your entire system of growing up is at fault. You need to change your entire system, structurally speaking, how to govern your entire family. 国有国法，家有家规。If the laws and regulations, if the rules and regulations are incorrect and which thus cause such things, change it, right?
Or was it just one super kid? Maybe some solid steel marionette who's also on his way to becoming a real boy too? Anyway, these are the expensive things to replace, but when you actually run the numbers, they don't wind up being all that expensive. Ferris wheels are surprisingly cheap, which is honestly kind of scary to think about as you dangle 40 feet in the air on one. Smaller, used Ferris wheels cost as little as $15,000. Back in 2008, the Santa Monica Ferris wheel was put on sale on eBay for a mere $50,000. And it's worth noting that Ferris wheel is both large and famous, which is jacking up the cost. So we're gonna assume that the coachman isn't feeling too spendy here, and we'll go with that $15,000 estimate, or 572 old-timey adjusted dollars. Still nothing that's even close to making a dent into his total profits. Now, the carousel's gonna run you a bit higher. The cheapest option is from the Carousel Works for about $320,000, or $12,000 in inflation-adjusted costs. Now, they wouldn't have to buy a whole new carousel every time so long as the turntable still worked, but from what I can tell, in carousel terms, that thing is totaled, which means that the coachman is going to be forking out $12,000 for a new merry-go-round every time he does one of these little trips. So between the two major rides that need to be replaced with every new batch of kids, plus all the smaller incidentals I mentioned, the coachman is looking at about $13,000 worth of operating costs, which still leaves him with $146,904, or $4 million of 2018 money. But the biggest cost here is actually still coming: kidnapping the boys in the first place. The coachman has to pay low-life scum like Honest John with a big ol' sack of loot that we actually get to see. How big is it? This sack of loot is so big that it would be totally devastating to carry. I ran calculations on the amount of gold this thing holds by comparing it to the size and capacity of a standard German beer stein, which we see it lined up against in this shot. It comes out to about 1,900 cubic inches of gold, which converts to a whopping 1,211 troy ounces, or 83 pounds of gold. Don't you be forgetting about leg day, coachman. Now, this has got to be the amount of gold traded to fill the entire boat, and this, by far, is the coachman's largest expense per night, coming in at $1,631,785.93 as of writing this script. That converts to $63,179 in Pinocchio's terms. Aw, poor coachman, look at all those human trafficking profits just melting away. Now our total earnings per boatload of boys has been sliced in half, coming to about $83,725 every time, or a bit over $2 million. Now, honestly, that wouldn't be too bad of a profit for kidnapping 2,000 children and selling them off as donkeys. But
once again, this is a bad business. Please treat one another. We are all humans. Please treat one another with proper decency, with appropriate and proper respect. Thank you so much.
We're still neglecting one huge consideration here. This whole time we've just been assuming that Pleasure Island was just there. But the park had to be built in the first place, and building the park is going to be a huge investment for any child kidnappers to be. So let's look at the big ticket items here. First, there's the cost of that swell roller coaster. Even small steel cookie cutter roller coasters cost about $5 million up front to build, or about $190,000 in Pinocchio's time. That cost alone is more than one night could possibly earn at Pleasure Island. So we know that this isn't the coachman's first time at the rodeo. He is truly talking from experience when he says,
They never come back as boys.
In order to make this business anywhere close to profitable, he's going to need more than one boatload of boys. Now add to that the cost of actually building the structures that we see on the park grounds, including walls, a giant gate, a mansion, a tower, a pool hall, slides, and suddenly the costs start growing really fast. Luckily, Pleasure Island is much smaller than most amusement parks, having only a few rides and only intending to host about 2,000 guests at a time. So we'll have to do some scaled estimates based on costs of other similarly sized parks. Luckily, we can use the recent expansion of Universal's Diagon Alley for Harry Potter Land, a project that cost a reported $400 million to make. Now, that $400 million does include $100 million for the Escape from Gringotts ride, so we'll have to knock that one off, but that still leaves us with $300 million for one small section of a theme park.
Wow, literally multi-million dollars.
Even in Pinocchio's time, that is a whopping $11.4 million. If Pleasure Island were even only the size of just that one small section of a park, there would still be a huge amount of upfront costs in creating this business, one that would take the coachmen years to recoup. So this whole thing seems busted then, right? With an upfront cost of $11.5 million between the roller coaster, the park, the other rides, the employees, $76,210 in costs every time the coachman brings in another batch and they completely trash the place, he would need to bring in 139 boatloads of small boys to Pleasure Island before he would even start to turn a profit. That translates to a whopping 292,000 children.
More than 250,000.
Won't somebody please think of the children?
That's gotta be impossible, right? No, it's not. The coachman's main source of children during this time would have been orphans. France kept remarkable records of child abandonment in the 19th century, but they were basically the only country who did, so we'll have to work off of their numbers. France recorded about 164,000 abandoned children annually in the
Annually, every single year. Why?
mid-1800s. And that's just one of many European nations the coachman and his goons could have been traveling. If Italy and Spain had even half of those numbers, the coachman could have shockingly made his money back in less than a year from only the abandoned children of 3 European countries. Going into year 2, it's actually conceivable that he could have been running the most profitable enterprise in all of Europe, while most other countries would have had no idea because they weren't even keeping records of orphans. And why? How was he able to do this? Why are there so many parentless children walking around? Because of all the wars happening in Europe during this era. Most of these orphans were children whose parents had died in the war. Those are the children that we see the coachmen snatching up and reselling.
Back then when gunpowder, firearms, like advanced firearms was more prevalent, and people say that since I got this, I can, instead of training for years, decades on how to manage a sword, the techniques, the skills for a spear, right, the shield, I can just boom, so 1 plus away, I won. This gives them an illusion of, I'm stronger than you, even though my army is smaller than you. This sort of illusions cause a lot of human casualty. Why?
In an unbelievable twist, the supply of abandoned children during this time period in this part of the world was so incredibly high that the coachman could have actually pulled off kidnapping and reselling 292,000 children, making it one of the most heinous and cold-blooded acts in history. This is the truly horrifying levels of evil that we see at play in Pinocchio, and worst of all, the coachman totally gets away with it in the movie. Old school Disney is pretty hardcore, but Pinocchio is especially brutal because in this case, we never see any kind of justice served to any of the villains in this film. In our quote-unquote good ending, the only one we see getting rescued is Pinocchio. He's the only one. All of the other 2,000 children that we see enter Pleasure Island, that we actually watch get transformed into donkeys, all of them don't escape, all of them don't have a blue fairy protecting them, all of them get sold off into the salt mines to the highest bidder, and the coachman and Honest John and Gideon are all left to run their business for another day. Just think about that next time you hear Jiminy Cricket talking about wishing upon a star. I know about 300,000 kids who'd like another crack at their wish. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And apropos to nothing, I think everyone deserves a chance to watch the first 5 seconds of Pinocchio in outer space.
The adventure you're about to see is based on a true portrayal of outer space.
That looks like an asteroid below us, but where's that exhaust coming from? It isn't an asteroid. It's Astro!
Wow. Wow, your creativity, your imagination must be off the chart, man. Off the roof if you can think of something like that. Well, it's quite sad, you know. I'm really glad that MadPat did episodes about such things, such historical facts. Even though it's sad, it's good that we actually learn from our past, learn from our humanity past. What you have done, what our ancestors have done, we do not make the same mistakes again. Alright? And yeah, I'm just thankful that MadPat mentioned this in one of his theory videos, so that we can be educated and we can learn from it, be taught that this sort of heinous, cold-blooded, evil actions was done in our human history, your human history, our human history, so that we can learn from it and not repeat the same mistakes again. Well, once again, I'm thankful for it. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you do like this video, please remember to like, share and subscribe to my channel, and comment down below if you have anything to share with us. Don't forget to follow my channel, and I sincerely appreciate all of your support and encouragement for my work. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you all in my next video. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory, and cut. And I hope to see you all in my next video. Thank you so much. Once again, please remember to subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much. Thank you.